In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Do you want the whole truth?
I don't think you're ready.
Governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people.
It's Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth.
Well, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. We're glad you're here, right here on the AFR Talk Network. I'm Crane Durham. This is Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Got a big show for you tonight. Bottom of the hour, we have Pastor Aaron Free. He will be discussing the anti-Zionism movement in the United States, specifically what he touched on last week and the conference that some evangelical leaders are going to that is anti-Israel. We'll talk to Pastor Free about that, as well as a latest update on John Kerry, the P1+5 talks. Countries, except for France, who was not on board for this, others include China and Russia and Germany in the United States and Great Britain, are sitting in and making a deal with the Iranians. That's what it looks like. And it will allow them to move ahead on their nuclear weapon. Now, he denies that, but we'll talk to Aaron Free about that and what it means not only to us, but also specifically to Israel and what Israel may be planning to do. So stay tuned for all that. Now, what about the filibuster? The filibuster, big news. You heard about it, American Family News. Chris Woodward, Chad Gronin, the crew, knocking it out of the park, of course. Yeah, the nuclear option sounds serious. It is serious. It's very serious. It was serious in 2005 and 2006. And Harry Reid went nuclear today. In response to Harry Reid going nuclear, ending what would take 60 votes, now a simple majority, to advance judicial nominees to a specific court, by the way. This is about a very specific court. Mitch McConnell told a little funny, and I thought we needed a little humor, okay? Because we got to put a smile on our face. It's Thursday. A lot of serious stuff is going on, but don't forget this. God knows you. God loves you. He created you, and that's not a joke. And he loves you right where you're at. Plus, Mitch McConnell telling a funny. Roll it.
To them, and another set to everybody else. He may as just as well have said, if you like the rules of the Senate, you can keep them. Huh? If you like the rules of the Senate, you can keep them. Just the way so many Democrats in the administration and Congress now believe that Obamacare is good enough for their constituents, but then when it comes to them, their political allies, their staffs, well, of course, that's different.
A lot of pauses there. Yeah. Tough crowd. Mitch is working on his delivery. You know, he said the line twice. He was like, did you get it? Well, they are not able to keep their filibuster. Harry Reid did go nuclear. Here is the motivational speaker himself and Senate Majority Leader. Roll it.
It's bad for our national security and bad for economic security. That's why it's time to get the Senate working again. Not for the good of the current Democratic majority or some future Republican majority, but for the good of the United States of America. It's time to change. It's time to change the Senate before this institution becomes obsolete.
Okay, he listed the fact that there have been delays and a whole host of problems leading up to that, and then he mentioned national security, a threat to national security, and he made the statement. He went nuclear. Said, we got to move on. Government's got to function. Got to work. And this is what he said in 2006. It's a montage. You will also hear Dianne Feinstein and Chuck Schumer, and featuring the stylings in the end, once again, the principled stylings of Harry Reid closing it out. So it's a Harry Reid sandwich. Enjoy. Roll it.
Hasn't gotten his way. And that is now prompting, a change.
Stop that one. That's my fault. But the Harry Reid montage, which would be, again, I think it was cut 6, but I'm probably wrong, is, wait a second, is the president on that montage? My apologies. I got spooked because of the president coming on first. I was like, whoa, wait a second. There's not. No. The president, who agreed with this today, allows me to make a very good point. Was this all planned? That's for you to decide. The president also, in 2005, spoke out against this. So, hey, it's a montage, but you have Harry Reid in it. It's just not a Harry Reid sandwich. Roll it.
Hasn't gotten his way. And that is now prompting, a change in the Senate rules that really, I think, would change the character of the Senate forever. And what I worry about would be that you essentially have still 2 chambers, the House and the Senate, but you have simply majoritarian absolute power on either side. And that's just not what the founders intended.
That's not what the founders intended. There was no Harry Reid there. Now, we got to find the clip with Harry Reid because people like the president, but we want Harry Reid. And that is my mistake because I said clip 6 thinking it was a montage. It's clips number 7. Roll it.
Mr. President, the right to extended debate is never more important than when one party controls Congress and the White House. In these cases, the filibuster serves as a check on power and preserves our limited government.
The nuclear option, if successful, will turn the Senate into a body that could have its rules broken at any time by a majority of senators unhappy with any position taken by the minority. It begins with judicial nominations. Next will be executive appointments, and then legislation.
This nuclear option is ultimately an example of the arrogance of power. It is a fundamental power grab.
But no, we are not going to follow the Senate rules. No. Because of the arrogance of power of this Republican administration.
Bottom line, they did what they argued against. That's why I called it the principled stylings of one Harry Reid. You also had President Obama in there speaking out against it. He spoke out for it today. We're going to cover this with Hans von Spakovsky. He was actually writing about what the goal of this is, and there are a few goals with this particular move today. One of them is to distract us from Obamacare, the disaster that we told you it was, that you knew it was, that now the president can't lie enough to get out of. So we're dealing with that. Hans von Spakovsky, senior legal analyst at the Heritage Foundation, will be with us at the top of next hour. Right now, we go to the president speaking to an economic forum, and the interviewer has kind of a nice back and forth. So I thought it would be good to get this for one reason. We are jumping to 1. And it speaks to something that we talk about a lot, the divide that we have in this country and why we have the divide. What is the divide? Are we that divided? Well, the president says no. Roll it.
Conversations with the Republicans, I actually think the divide is not that wide. So what we just have to do is find a pathway where Republicans in the House in particular feel comfortable enough about process that they can go ahead and meet us. This, by the way, Jerry, I think is a good example of something that's been striking me about our politics for a while. When you go to other countries, the political divisions are so much more stark and wider. Here in America, the difference between Democrats and Republicans, we're fighting inside the 40-yard line. Maybe
you fooled most people on that in the last few months, I'd say.
No. I would distinguish between the rhetoric and the tactics versus the ideological differences.
Question number one, who's using the rhetoric? We got to go rich versus poor, Wall Street versus Main Street, black versus white, men versus women. Actually, I'm sorry. I shouldn't actually say it's black versus white. It should be Republicans versus minorities in general. Conservatives versus minorities. So who's doing that? And the tactics, who's ignoring the law? Well, the president continued, and he said, hey, people call me a socialist, but if you want to see a real socialism, you want to see real socialism? Hop across the pond over in Europe. Roll it.
I mean, in most countries, you've got, people call me a socialist sometimes, but no, you got to meet real socialists. You'll have a sense of what a socialist is. I'm talking about lowering the corporate tax rate. My health care reform is based on the private marketplace. Stock market's looking pretty good last time I checked. And it is true that I'm concerned about growing inequality in our system, but nobody questions the efficacy of market economies in terms of producing wealth and innovation and keeping us competitive. On the flip side, most Republicans, even the Tea Party, one of my favorite signs during the campaign was folks hoisting a sign, governments keep your hands off my Medicare. Think about that. I mean, ideologically, they did not like the idea of the federal government, and yet they felt very protective about the basic social safety net that had been structured. So,
all right, just a few things here. One, that corporate tax, he would lower the corporate tax, but he would remove certain deductions. And overall, the tax center has done an analysis of this, and it said it would actually increase the effective tax burden. So either it's the same as it would be, or it's a net increase after the deductions. So, one hand is doing this, the other hand is doing this. How about I-1? Remember that? Occupy Wall Street. You didn't build that. The president says something, we look at the record, it does not match up. Captain Obvious is here. Okay, back to what the president was saying, because he was making a point. What was your point, Mr. President? Roll it.
So my simple point is this. If we can get beyond the tactical advantages that parties perceive in painting folks as extreme and trying to keep an eye always on the next election, and for a while at least just focus on governing, then there is probably 70% overlap on a whole range of issues.
You ever deal with a drug addict? Do you? I know this is nothing but truth. I got to shoot you square, folks. When you hear the president make these statements, this is not about President Obama. Our president is making these statements, and they're deeply troubling to me because either it's mental illness or there's an addiction of some kind. Well, I know there's an addiction to government and government spending, and the ends justify the means. And he believes he's doing the right thing. Remember, he wants to transform America. I'm getting all that. I've gotten it. I've gotten it from day one, quite frankly, but I don't go to somebody's motives. But when he is saying this, and you look at the record, and there's such a sharp contrast between his words and his actions, people can start going, well, maybe he is all about bipartisanship. Maybe he is about actually convincing people. You see, this is the dangerous part. They're not about convincing people that they have the right answer. They're about the use of power, using the mechanisms within the government to do what they can and push it to the line and even over the line with recess appointments when the court wasn't in recess. By the way, getting back to the filibuster, that's the court that called President Obama out on that maneuver. There's another point to that court, too. It doesn't have enough of a workload to require more justices, but I digress. The president reminds me of talking to an addict with mental illness. And you say, that's terrible, Crane. That is absolutely... No, the president isn't mentally ill, and no, he's not an addict. But what he is saying is so apart from what he does about bipartisanship and this idea, hey, I got friends behind me. It's like that. That's how I'm thinking. And understand, I could go back and look at other presidents. We're dealing with President Obama right now. I don't care if he's a D or if you were an R. I don't think you'd have to do this if you're a conservative, because you do have a record and there is success. If you want everlasting success, you got to base it on a Christian foundation. But I digress. The point here is the president says one thing, does another, and then keeps saying it like, I want to work together on these things. And there were many chances to do so. I don't want the divide. You got to look at rhetoric and versus tactics. There you go. And I'm thinking to myself, who's been using the class warfare rhetoric? Who's been using and invoking race in the discussion on illegal immigration? So you could sit there and go, what? What did he just say? Huh? Oh, I've got Republicans say, that's like, it reminds me of I got friends, absolutely. I don't do any of that. No. I have friends, and friends tell me I'm doing just fine, and we work together. What? The Republicans are wanting to work with you? Well, who are they? That's fine if they do. I get it. But ideologically, there's a huge divide. Huge. And for you to go forward and talk about people being called extreme and how that's poisoning the process, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, your side has been doing that for the last 3+ years with the Tea Party. And then you say, by the way, the IRS went after him. I mean, this is up is down, folks. You don't have to be a conservative. You don't have to be a liberal. You just have to have an IQ above room temperature and some capacity to remember. And you're going to say, what in the world did the president say? How could he say that? And I say that with respect for the office. And the fact that I'm deeply troubled by the idea that this man continues to say these things. Ideological divide? Seriously? Role of government in medicine? Forcing people to buy a product? But he is right on one thing, and I have to give him this, as I was thinking about this afternoon. He is right that it's not a Democrat or a Republican thing. Democrats do the vast majority of it. They're openly big government liberals. But it is about power. And the idea that you can get some Republicans on board for big government programs, not respecting the Constitution or choosing just to ignore or turn a blind eye, which Democrats do in the sense of the parameters of the powers, the limiting powers. Yeah, you can always find people who are a part of government, R&D alike, who will use government in a way that they think, hey, it's going to help people and work out and cut out special projects. You see that with Chuck Grassley and wind. And ethanol, look at people supporting ethanol. Now, by the way, ethanol folks, don't get mad at me. Get mad at the people that expose what ethanol does to the environment and how inefficient it is, and just allow it to be used on the free market, in the free market. Another digression, but just saying. It really gets me that, yeah, we can. And I think that's what the Tea Party represents, and I think that's what the new political movement represents. It's not so much the establishment in the sense of establishment of the parties. It's the establishment of the Washington class. And people saying, no, we want the states to decide when it comes to the issue of life. Because I know, that will lead to a constitutional amendment for protecting life. We want that. You took it from us in overreach in 72. We want that debate. We want the legal decisions respected when it comes to marriage. We want a federal government that doesn't spend $17 trillion, then talk about cutting a yearly deficit to $800 to $600 billion, which is 40% higher than any deficit the predecessor, George W. Bush, ever had, and any other president. We don't want games. And we want clarity with our foreign policy as well. Only so much time. Bottom line, deep ideological differences. Good point that, yes, you will find people a part of government, Republicans and Democrats alike, who will use it, and some will believe, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, that they're doing the right thing, but it violates their conservative principles, and they've done this with other programs. And Newt Gingrich actually pointed that out and said, hey, I remember back in 93 when all of the discussion was going on, but I think we've learned that when this is practiced in any way, it's really detrimental. That's nothing but truth. Crane Durham's nothing but truth. On the flip side, what we're going to do as we go to break, thank you, my friend, is talk to Aaron Free. He's been swinging the bat in the bullpen. He's ready to go. Yeah, you criticize the president for using football analogies, and then football metaphors, and you do the same. What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay. Aaron Free, Pastor Aaron Free, author of 2-Minute Warning. He is with us. He's a senior pastor at Knollwood Church, Mobile, Alabama. He does a prayer at the end of the show for those to come to Christ. You can get to the Facebook page, Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, on AFR Talk, American Family Radio. You can also know that we are going to be talking about a movement within the Christian community, yes, in America, too, that is anti-Israel, and it's growing. That next, right here, Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR Talk.